It is Veterans Day on November 11th, 2024. So definitely a salute to our veterans and all along those lines. But it is, of course, time for World Edition, and a number of things are going on in the world. Israel's Netanyahu acknowledges pager attack, saying he sees eye to eye with Trump on Iran. And he said that he approved the pager attack against Hezbollah, according to a spokesman. So definitely that's just something going on in the news. And Gary Connelly, Haiti's prime minister, has been ousted after 6 months. So that's something else that's in the news. So Haiti's prime minister ousted in latest blow to transition. So definitely it's only been in power for 6 months, and we'll see what else happens in the island of Haiti next, and all along those lines. And tens of thousands of college students in China went cycling at night. That put the government on edge, and apparently they went on a night quest for dumplings. So that definitely took on, and definitely it looks like their China's U-turn, according to Bloomberg, on night biking craze shows obsession with control. So definitely that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And after a 2,000-mile trip, a penguin finds itself on an Australian beach. The first emperor penguin found in Australia after a 2,000-mile journey from Antarctica. So definitely it's known to have reached Australia after having gone on that long hike. And a malnourished emperor penguin that swam ashore in Australia 2,000 miles from home is a quandary for its rescuers. And Japan's parliament re-elects Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba despite bruising election results. So Japanese Prime Minister is likely to survive leadership vote at a critical moment for a major U.S. ally. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And Japan's Ishiba wins a runoff vote to stay as prime minister ahead of a likely Trump meeting. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And these nations are gathering together for a UN climate talk in Baku, Azerbaijan. And definitely Trump worries and leaders' absences cloud the COP29 climate summit in Baku. So definitely that's something that we're going to be talking about as well. And Dutch police arrest dozens who defy protest ban after an anti-Semitic riots in Amsterdam. So definitely they're saying the UEFA silence on Amsterdam's program isn't the only hypocrisy, is getting fed up with Israel as well. So definitely we'll see what folks got to say about that as well. And at least 40 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli strike in Gaza, according to medics. So that's something else that's in the news. And the Russian-Ukraine war intensifies as Ukraine launches its biggest ever drone attack on Moscow. So definitely that's something else that's going on as well. And Justin Welby faces pressure to resign over church abuse scandal. So the bishop calls on the Archbishop of Canterbury to quit over the sex abuse scandal. So there's definitely a growing pressure for him to resign, and all in that way. And tens of thousands of Spaniards demand Valencia leaders' resignation because of what they're feeling was not handled correctly, because they felt the flood response was bungled. So it looks like deleted tweets, missed warnings, and calls for the hangman. The bitter political fallout from Spain's floods. So definitely we'll see what folks have to say about that as well. And China's J-35A stealth fighter is a black box despite splashy debut. So definitely we'll see what's going on in this way as the newly announced J-35A functions within stealth and counter-stealth frameworks, and it could strengthen China's combat system, according to a top developer. So we'll see if this changes the nature of power in that sense. And a Yemen missile interception sparks fire near Jerusalem as 4 drones were launched from Iraq. So definitely that war is continuing as well. And Kate Middleton's body language is at today's somber outing spoke volumes as Kate Middleton was maintaining Remembrance Day and all along those lines. So this was her return to royal duty after a cancer battle. So that's something else we're seeing as well. And as Trump threatens a wider trade war, the U.S. confronts a changed China. So Trump's terror threats looms on several Asian countries, not just China, according to Goldman Sachs. So from Taiwan to technology, China ponders what's to come under Trump 2.0. So that's something that we can talk about in the news as well. And there was a toxic smog in Pakistan, and they're saying that it is so bad you can see it from space. So Pakistan has limited outdoor activities, market hours to curb air pollution related illnesses, and children are constantly coughing as Pakistan's record smog forces people home. Over 11 million children under 5 are in peril as they breathe toxic air in Punjab, according to the UNCF. An earthquake rocks Cuba as residents struggle to recover from the recent storms. So they're dealing with earthquakes and storms as well. And like I said, it looks like 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops massed ahead of an attack, according to the U.S. The U.S. and Ukraine says 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops are heading to Kursk. So definitely we'll see what goes on in that way. And in the other part of war, traumatized by war, hundreds of Lebanon children are struggling with wounds, both physical and emotional. So that's some of the world news. Let's see if I can get to some other news around the United States, and then I'll bring in Rick and see who else is with me here as well, if anybody, and then we'll get into some other conversations. It looks like wildfires are burning in 2 states that are turning deadly. So firefighters are battling to contain dangerous wildfires burning on both coasts. So we've got dangerous wildfires on both the east and the west coast. And Trump has named Elsie Stefanik as the UN ambassador and Tom Homan as border czar. So Tom Homan is the former ICE director, and he says he's honored to be appointed Trump's border czar. We have to fix it. So definitely, it looks like private prison stocks to jump on Trump's appointment of immigration hardliner Tom Homan. So looks like some of the prison folks are already being prepared for what could be some of the other proposals that they may come up with as well. But definitely looks like Trump's mass deportation plan could mean some interesting things for both immigrant workers and the economy. So definitely folks are looking at that. And Vivek Ramaswamy is calling for unity, and he's defended Trump's immigration plan. And definitely we'll see how this goes. I know that some of the governors have said that they will stand up against any sort of attempt to deport folks. I know that was the California governor, and I think a couple of governors in the north as well. So we'll see if this is all just talk or if they will actually try to resist any of these efforts. And there's still fight over the control of the House. House majority hinges on 18 uncalled races, with Republicans just 4 seats away. So they are 4 seats away from having total control of the legislative branch, as well as, of course, the presidency, and of course now the Supreme Court they've had for a while as well, meaning the Republican Party. But we'll see how this all plays out as this goes on. So definitely we're going to, and by the way, I think that Biden has invited Trump to the White House on Wednesday so they can begin the transition process and have some conversations about that. An arrest was made in Tuskegee University shooting that left 1 dead and 16 injured. So that is something that was going on at a major HBCU homecoming activity as well. So like I said, I'm getting ready to bring in some other folks, and all along those lines, they are saying that Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo won't be on Trump's second-term team. So Mike Pompeo says he was proud to work with Trump after the role was ruled out and everything like that. So definitely looks like Trump has rejected both of those for a cabinet seat. But we'll see who other cabinet people come about and all along those lines. But I've got Rick Rosner with me. I've also got Sasha Starr, see what they've got to say about a number of these news stories. So how are things going on the West Coast and in Canada?
That's fine. Here, let me throw some numbers at you. So the election was a solid repudiation of the Democrats, though not a landslide. We haven't had a landslide election since 1984 for Reagan's second election. But Trump got, right now, votes are still being counted. Trump has just under 75 million votes compared to 74 million he got in 2020. He's got 50.4% of the popular vote, and Harris has 48% of the popular vote with 71 million and change. So that's really where the change is. The Biden got 81 million votes in 2020, and Harris got 71 million votes, about 10 million fewer.
Right, and they are saying that some of those people are people that decided not to vote at all. I did watch, as I said I was going to do, because I had to work that event. Reverend Barber brought up a couple of things. One, he felt that it was a mistake to give up 172 electorate votes automatically because of the ones that have been declared red, and he thought that the Democratic Party should have gone into those areas. He also mentioned that they should have gone into some of the more rural areas, because apparently they did not campaign that hard in even like North Carolina and some of the other rural parts that they won.
Yeah, when you look at the Harris lost in a ton of places, and like, so, which means like no one thing led to there was, it wasn't like you change one little thing in the campaign and it would have made a difference. She needed 7-8 million more votes.
Yep.
And so
yeah, she needed more votes, and that's definitely the case along those lines. And like I said, he's already putting together his cabinet, and he's got a hardliner right now. But one of the things, because I was looking at some of the more right-leaning social media posts, and there is this push now because of what they're saying is a red wave to get voter ID back. So definitely that's something that some of the right leaning media, and particularly social media, is pushing, because they showed a map where the only places that she won was places that didn't have voter ID or had lax voter ID and everything. So that there will be
the people, like some people are saying there was cheating, and there wasn't. What it was is during COVID they made it really easy to vote. And 158 million people voted. This time around, the Republicans tried to make it a little harder to vote. And maybe when we're done counting votes, we'll have 152 million votes, 6 million fewer, which is still a strong turnout, but it was a little tougher to vote, and a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, some people just decided to sit it out. But like I said, the voter ID was mentioned, and they're talking about trying to maybe make a law, because I think there was even some people that were pushing for a constitutional amendment to have a voter ID, but constitutional amendments can be difficult to one, get implemented, and two, to approve. But if you got the total control, you might be able to get it through faster than
well, let's see what Sasha has to say about everything.
Well, I have to say that there are two parts that we can meaningfully discuss. Part number one is the unquestionable triumph of Trump, and now he has a green light in all directions, whether it's presidency, Senate, the House, judicial, the Supreme Court. So there are no obstacles really on his way for next at least 2 years, maybe all 4, but at least 2 years, right? So this is very important. And second part, now we can try to figure out why that happened. But it's a second question that has nothing to do with the first one. And all this exercises to saying that, well, it wasn't a landslide, it was close to landslide, but it was not exactly a landslide because of this and that. And 7-8 million voters didn't show up. And if they did show up, then Kamala would win. Well, the 7-8 million voters, or would-be voters, they've just punished their own party, and Kamala Harris in particular, who actually had a quite impressive campaign. And for a person who had no experience in public speaking and who came up in the last moment, I think she had a fantastic job. The only problem is that that's her last chance for presidency. She'll never will be nominated again. And first of all, she's not going to win the nomination, even if she wanted to. And second of all, I don't think she wants to go through this vigorous process. No, she's not going to do it. But she did a credible campaign. If you want to analyze why Democrats lost so badly, number one reason is definitely Joe Biden. Joe Biden, when he was going through the first nomination 4 years ago, he was saying repeatedly that he is one-term president. due his age, due his nature, that basically he put up his name to fight a second presidency of Donald Trump. So he did it simply like he couldn't do it otherwise. And he's one-time president. In the meantime, if you win the presidency, the Democratic Party will figure out the next leaders and so on. Well, what's happened in 2022 when Democrats did better than expected in midterm elections? That was a time that Biden had to follow up on what he said before. He had to explicitly explain that he's not going to run for president in 2024 and offer a platform, Democratic Party, in form of primaries and due process to elect next leader who will go for the election. Instead, his hunger for power overshadowed his good judgment, and he started, in spite of the fact that he was doing really badly in polls, and his personality started to really get on him. And finally, it's all culminated in his debates with Donald Trump. Now, his theory is that he did it on purpose. He was playing really a damn sick man on purpose to get off the distance at some point, and because all his speeches before the debates and whatever his speeches after the debates, they were absolutely on different level than what he demonstrated during the debates. So, and another fact is that in his last speech, he never mentioned Kamala Harris' name even once. So that tells me that he is vindictive. He wanted Kamala to lose, and finally that's happened. And in my book, he is. I'm not saying that Donald Trump wouldn't win otherwise. He would still probably win. But what Democrats did is unspeakable. They are now hitting each other, and, going through the Met House process. But listen, the winner takes it all, and that winner is Donald J. Trump.
So they say that one measure of how bad a president is how long it takes in the next presidency to fix the damage caused by that previous president. And Trump left a mess. And there was a lot of complacency with the Democrats that they were thinking, I think, we're just going to do our best job, and then people will see we're trying really hard. That wasn't enough. If you had a time machine, then you could go back and tell the Dems what to do over their whole administration. They needed to be just as mean about the border as the Republicans were. They needed to do in 2021 what they did in 2023, which was shut the border back down again. The rights of immigrants be damned. And then they needed to write checks to Americans the way we did with COVID, except this time for inflation. We understand that inflation is costing you more at the grocery. Here's a check for $1,800, everybody. They didn't do that. And yeah, they were very smug about, things are fine. We're working really hard for America. America was not, didn't know that.
Hey, Rick, along those same lines and everything.
I wanted to add to this conversation. I think that the Democrats use a little bit too much common sense sometimes and too much integrity, because they won't go attacking the White House over this election as a sore loser. But what I think is nobody really did the math and seeing how ridiculous some of the claims were, nor did they really take a look at the real stats. So if you take a look and do the math for 10 million immigrants crossing the border, Trump said that we had 20 million here, but encounters mean something different than the actual crossing over. So you have 10 million that they claim are here. If you did the math for the last 4 years or 3, that's showing close to 8 to 9,000 crossing a day. Like
Yeah, well,
zoom,
yeah,
zoom, zoom.
the
And I've been
Democrats.
to a lot of these places, and I didn't see anyone crossing. Huh?
Yeah,
And then you have where they actually, when Biden actually said, okay, well, if Congress isn't going to pass Harris's law, he did an emergency situation. And according to the reports from the president of Mexico and other places, he literally cut the attempted crossings in half by 50%. Now, and Rick, I listened to your stats. Less than 1%, I think less than 0.01% are actually criminals, or reported criminals or convicted criminals of crimes greater than driving without a license. Okay, so I mean, I've read your stats, I've reviewed all of this information. Now, something people don't know is the 10 million undocumented immigrants that are living here. Majority of them crossed over in 2010. Majority. And again, encounters is different. This is when they report what they believe is here. It's based on encounters. Encounters can mean that they bumped into the same immigrant 4 times, so they counted that immigrant 4 times. So you can't really trust all of that counting data, and that's how they count the immigrants for the United States, is based on encounters. And then
Well, the Dems have always failed to educate America about the terms you're talking about. Like,
right. I mean,
Obama deported more immigrants than Trump did.
Actually, Biden deported, or not deported, but he turned back 3 million.
Back, yeah.
He pushed, but they didn't even cross over 3 million in less than 3 years. What the report was showing was a less than 3-year period. He returned 3 million, and he deterred over half of what was being at the border. With the law that he implemented in May after Congress shot down Harris's suggestion for border control.
But no messaging about that.
No, because Trump was too loud. Trump was way too loud. The best salesmen, unfortunately, are those who can spread fear into the hearts of people to make them believe that they have to buy now. They have to do something now. And the Democrats didn't educate at all on this situation, and I don't know why. Or maybe they were, and Trump's message was shorter and louder and easier for the people.
It might have just been easier to digest and everything, but one of the things that they are saying, because I was reading a report on this earlier today as well, is that if some of the Trump's plans come to fruition and everything, it'll actually drive the economy into greater inflation, not lesser inflation, because if the migrants are deported in this mass deportation that he's talking about, 2 of the industries that'll be hit the hardest are going to be labor and agriculture, because they are heavily migrant populated. So then the employers have said that they would have to pass on the cost to the consumers, and I don't know that the consumers were realizing that, or maybe they were at the time of voting and everything. And they're even saying that the tariffs, the companies have to pay the tariffs, not the foreign companies. But if you watch people on social media, they're thinking that the companies themselves that are overseas are paying, but it's actually the American companies that will be paying the brunt for the tariffs. And there have been several of them companies that have already said that they will pass those costs on to the consumers.
Well, and I want to remind the people, I don't know about you guys, but how they were spreading the fear that the migrants are taking all of our sustainable jobs. I've had no issues with migrants taking my sustainable job here in America. I've had no problems with anyone taking my sustainable job in America. My biggest problem was the big corporations getting the 40% tax cut Trump gave them, outsourcing my sustainable jobs to other countries like China, India, Mexico. So, you got to really take a look at the laws and how they really impacted you. Not listen to the salesman, the car salesman telling you, hey, this car right here is great for you. because they're going to tell you what you want to hear. And that's what we've heard for the last 2 years from Trump, is everything that the people felt like they wanted to hear. But things are going to come true, just like he promised. He's going to end the war. I think the quickest way is for him to partner with BRICS. And when he does that, manufacturing will come to America, because we will have to manufacture for BRICS. But his recent promise is the gun laws, the concealing gun laws, with the pushing of the Second Amendment, that they will be able to, shoot and kill under siege. And under siege, I don't know if anyone ever really reads the laws, but I'm sure the Patriots and the Proud Boys know these rules inside and out. Under siege means that they can even kill law enforcement if they feel like that they're being placed under siege. So Trump had just made this announcement probably yesterday. I saw it posted I watch his son's site to see all the good things that they think they're doing for America. So of course, all the gun-toting Americans think, oh, this is way cool. But what they don't understand is if a person feels like they're under siege, they have the right to shoot and kill you.
Well, not necessarily, because even my, as I mentioned, I think I was on the last day, I said, and I did go to it, that my aunt was having her 80th birthday party. So I ran into my cousin who came up from Georgia and used to be in the military and is now working on warp technology. He's been on our network as well, and his brother, who was a GBI officer. But in talking to him, one of his kids is in Mexico and has got his card from Mexico and all along those lines and everything. And he and his wife, who is there coming up on their 20th anniversary, were talking about the fact of not feeling secure and everything. So he was telling me the kinds of guns that he has in his personal arsenal, because like he said, if folks start coming after him, he's not going down without a fight and everything along those lines. And he is military based and everything like that. So, and he's even said if his brother's in arms, and that is a term that many military people use, and everything came after him, he might wind up disowning them and being ready to go
it's
after
kind
him.
of like in the situation with if any of y'all watched the January 6th day videos of them, take this down, don't let them stop you, put on your gas mask, keep going, kill the police if you have to. That would implement that the guys who were there attacking the White House, even though the White House was under siege, that would protect those people, because they were being attacked by the police doing what they felt like was their freedom of rights. So you really have to look into some of these things and some of these promises that people make. I think that he's going to uphold majority of the promises, but they're not going to be what the people thought they were.
Well, a lot of people already having second thoughts about that. Right now, there is some speculation, but Bernie is fighting against it, of urging one of the more liberal justices to step down, Sonia Sotomayor, and definitely right now she is ignoring pressure to retire and all along those lines. And the Democrats are agonizing over that. One of the ironic things that has been thrown out there, even though I don't think it would come to fruition, because it would have to be done before Trump came into office in January, is the notion of having Kamala Harris take that job, because I've seen a couple people float that idea, just like they floated the idea of her being governor of California. So what do we think? Is there any possibility that she may
she's not going to resign. She's 70 years old. She thinks she can make it through the next 4 years to the next presidency. Once Trump becomes president, at some point in his term, Alito and Thomas, who are like 74, 75 years old, those guys will resign so that Trump can replace them with like-minded hyper-conservatives who are younger, who are in their 40s, and who will serve for the next 50 years if they're lucky.
Well, speaking of age, that's another interesting theory that I've heard floated out there by a couple of people, but I don't know whether y'all agree with this or not. But some people are speculating that, Trump is not a spring chicken either, that he may retire at some point, and then we may get President Vance before President Vance has to run for office and all along those lines, because it would be the vice president being promoted in that case. So is there, not wishing any ill on President Trump, but is there any fear, or how do you think?
Sure, you can look at the betting markets, and I'm sure there's a bet you can make that Trump will or will not make it through his entire term.
Yeah, I'm sure that in the betting markets, and I'm already hearing some people put that out in the social media and all along.
I think he will. One of my other fears is some of the things that Elon mentioned, and it's something that my sister talked about as well. You know, she's in the finance industry, has been there for years and seen many things. And she said the only way we're going to be able to truly correct this inflation problem or to make changes necessary is to see something close to a depression. Think the market's going to have to crash in order to reboot itself. Elon mentioned that as well. He said that this country is going to have to, get broken apart and destroyed a bit, and we're going to have to suffer for a little while, but it will be for the greater good in the long run, which means the market's going to have to crash like the Great Depression.
A lot of this stuff, if they get to do what they want to do, will crash the market. If they do tariffs, crash the market. If they do tax cuts, it's going to lead to more government printing money that we didn't bring in, which will lead to inflation. So, if
tariffs will cause a huge inflation, and shrinkflation has really grown, because I just went to the market the other day and a package of bread that I used to buy this big for the same price is now this big, literally like half.
We went to the Cheesecake Factory for dinner over the weekend, and used to be you order something and they bring in a gigantic plate and it's overflowing. And now the portions are reasonable. They still bring you the gigantic plate, but now it doesn't fill the plate. And we talked to a waitress
it's
about
healthier
it.
And eat on the meal for 3 days.
Well, you don't we didn't take anything home. Oh, actually we did. We took home only one of our things, but usually you'd walk out with a whole big bag and you'd have enough.
How much influence?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that we're going to see, Elon has been under investigation for quite some time by some of the departments of the government. And guess what part of the government he's overseeing now? Now that Trump is in office, he is overseeing the exact divisions that were investigating him and his companies. So
it's crazy. He's got zero. He's got zero government.
Yeah, I've overheard some of the. Yeah, go ahead.
No, he's got zero I can't believe that RFK will get put in charge of entire departments, which would be. I mean, RFK is good at some stuff, but he's also a lunatic about a lot of stuff, and I don't want to see him in charge of the CDC, where that's. But
I've just had some open invitations to come to other countries for a while and work with some of their startups and some of their programs. I don't know. Who knows what I'll do, but. I foresee that if they make the big changes that they think that they're going to make and promise, that they're not going to be what the people expected.
And we'll find out and everything because we got both Shaquille and Toby here.
So I have a question for Shaq. Now, there's a Republican pattern over the past century that Republicans let the economy run hot. And you see great gains in the stock market, but it runs too hot. You end up with a downturn at the end. Not every Republican administration went like this, but Shaq, what do you see happening with the markets and investments and the overall economy over the next 4 years?
Look, to be perfectly honest with you, I just got here. We're almost at 35 minutes. Sasha's been here since the beginning, and I haven't heard him say a word. I think Sasha said that.
Both of you guys, Sasha and Shaq, you guys know more about finance and the economy than anybody else here.
And Sasha did give a long answer to another question earlier, so you missed that.
Okay, well, perhaps I missed it, but all right. So, look, I don't think the economy is going to be doom and gloom like you guys are describing. Yes, tariffs can have an effect, but tax cuts generally give a boost to the economy. If the economy can grow by more than the lost revenue, and that would be arguably a positive thing. So I think we've got to give things a chance to play out. I'm very interested to hear you, Rick, and Kimberly now acknowledge that shrinkflation has occurred, because that's been brought up over the years, and it's like, oh no, that's not happening. And Kimberly, I'm not sure what you mean when you say that you're not worried about your stable job. I didn't know that you had a minimum wage job on the side.
I don't
So
have a
I
minimum
think-
wage.
well,
I have a
then I think-
sustainable. I didn't say stable. I said sustainable.
Okay, well, I
So-
didn't know that you had a sustainable job on the side that was likely to be impacted by immigration. I think that a lot of what
None
the
of the
people are
sustainable
saying.
jobs are impacted by immigration. Immigration picks up the labor jobs that most Americans don't want, which is farming and things like that. Shaq, I don't know what you think you research, but majority of the people I spoke with, they really weren't in fear of their jobs being taken away from them by migrants. And the majority of our good sustainable jobs were outsourced to other countries. So
If I can finish my sentence,
Yeah,
please.
finish your sentence.
So
Yes,
a
go
lot of so a
Yeah.
lot of what
don't put words in my mouth that I didn't say.
I'm just going to go. Don't worry about it. You guys have fun.
Go ahead. Oh,
Mhm.
Sasha has a thing to
Sasha,
say.
yeah,
Let's
go
go.
Go ahead,
Sasha.
Sasha.
I'd like to mention something about immigration. Although there is no law engraved in stone that immigrants should be allowed to stay or deported from the country. There is nothing of that. That's a will of American people, whether to let them stay, or whether to get them all out of the United States, or let them, some of them stay, some of them get them out. There is nothing like that. Last election, just less than a week ago, American people expressed their desire to get immigrants out. Too bad for immigrants. Some of them are obviously good, innocent people and all this. But American people, they said that they want them out. There's nothing could be done about it. You can argue for days and weeks that they are economically productive and they will in a few years become law-abiding citizens, paying taxes and having families and sending their children to school and buying cars and houses. It doesn't matter. American people want them out. That's a law of the land, the will of American people. And I don't think it's a good thing that we are continuing to discuss the election and this, what's happened here in the economy. It doesn't matter. American people said loud and clear what they want. And government, including Donald Trump, they have to obey and do exactly what they promised and just follow up on it, whether it will create inflation or something. That's a secondary thing. That's whether it's happened or not, we don't know.
What do
So
you think?
the U.S. has
Hold on a
always,
second.
the U.S.
Go
has
ahead.
always been schizophrenic, of two minds about immigration. We had a Bracero program from 1942 to 1964, which brought in 5 million people from other countries, mostly Mexico, to do our work for us. In the middle of that, 1954, we had Operation Wetback to get rid of millions of immigrants who were working here. So, we always try to have our cake and eat it too and kick it out.
But Rick and Sasha, by that logic and everything, because this is something else I've heard in different discussions and all on those lines, and I know Nick, who has joined us here, and he might have some thoughts around this as well, is of immigrant descent. He's actually back in the area where his descendants are from, in Spain and everything. And in my understanding, Trump is an immigrant. I know his wife is an immigrant. So how far are we going to go in this anti-immigrant conversation?
I don't think it's an anti-immigrant conversation, Mark. See, I think this is where the media and the parties have blown this up. It's not an anti-immigrant. It deals with, are you immigrating legally or illegally? And I'll tell you, here's where the problem is. Okay, as I'm applying for immigration status or residency status here in Spain, they make you jump through all these hoops. You got to sign this paper, get this apostille, go get your bank records, go get your tax records, go do this, go do that. And I've had some immigrants that work for me from Canada, and also from South Africa. And they had to do the same thing, jump through this, jump through that hoop. And then finally, you might get residency status. But here's what people object to, just make it loud and clear. Some clown decides to skip the line, okay? And they decide to just, well, there's an open fence, I'm just gonna go right on in. And we accept them like they're citizens and they're wonderful. Well, we're not really accept them, but basically they mull throughout the United States, getting jobs, et cetera, with no repercussions whatsoever.
But who's hiring them, Nick? Who's hiring?
So, well, here's the point. The people that worked for me that came in from foreign countries were upset. They were upset with the illegal immigrants because they're going, I had to go through all this work to become a citizen, and you, my friend, skipped the line. So in that respect,
but who is physically hiring them and giving them jobs?
Well, that's irrelevant. I mean, what's relevant?
I don't think it's irrelevant because that's a big part of the problem. Why skip the line if nobody's? Why skip the line if people are not hiring?
Let's go to the first party, please. Let's go to the first party. The person who skipped the line. That's the person we need to focus in on. And that's what they're going to focus in on, the person who skipped the line. And we'll just go from there.
Really quickly,
Nick, I just want to know, should we hold accountable the people who actually hired these people and gave them jobs?
That's a secondary source. The primary source is the person who skipped the line.
I understand that, but they wouldn't skip and stay if nobody was hiring them.
Well,
how many illegal immigrants have you hired, Nick?
I didn't hire any illegal immigrants.
Right, exactly. Okay. You run a company.
Here's the point. Okay, and what you're trying to do is assess someone else, and this is typical Democrats. Let's blame the system. Let's blame a third party, and not go after the primary source. The primary
well,
source.
Like I said, we got the ICE agent that's apparently going to go after everybody now because he's in charge as the barter czar. We'll see what he does. But Jacoby, we got Jacoby here, so I was going to throw this question to Jacoby.
Before you go to that question, Mark, before you go, well, I was just going to interject because there's a lot of things that Nick said that was true, but also he did not point out the real factors that were the problem. So yes, people are upset when people jump the line. However, that was all demonized and all misrepresented. It doesn't tell the truth of why individuals were ending up in front of the line or actually trying to skip the line, because they've been sitting. As Nick, you're in that legal field, and we need more process. We need more people to process these individuals that have been trying for years. There's a backlog of at least 5 years of individuals that are sitting in these areas waiting to come across the line, but they can't get that opportunity, and their lives become in dire situations, so they try and chance it. So that's one thing. Also, there are more people who are overstaying their visas and their work permits. That's where the big immigration issue is. And we never talk about that. Why? Because the way that it has been used as a political tool. And the problem is that this immigration argument and the angst and anger around the immigration argument all comes out of the history of the U.S. And that history deals with a very nasty part of history coming from the white supremacist area, where it talks about the Great Replacement theory. And that is where the immigration problem comes from. It is a fictional issue. Yes, we do have an immigration problem where, hey, we've got to fix particular areas of, border crossings. Yes, but processing is the major thing. But the Great Replacement theory is where the true immigration fictional problem comes from. And that's where a lot of people voted against, because they kept talking about in the ads, they're coming to take your jobs. Donald Trump kept running on, well, they're just sending the worst. They're sending criminals. All these individuals are bad. Well, if you look at the figures over the 40 years that have come through, that's 0.1% that have come across that have a criminal record.
Now,
there are more.
0.01.
There are more. There are more. There's less there's less crime from immigrants than natural born citizens. So again, it was just all this hatred is based off of the history and the same reason a lot of people voted for these things. As Sasha pointed out, truthfully, these people knew what he was talking about. He said it plain as day. We talked about how he shut down Springfield. So they voted for these things. So that tells a lot about where these votes were coming from and where our country truthfully is today.
Let me talk about the meatpacking industry, which is a euphemism for taking cows and chickens and pigs and cutting them up. And it's horrible work. Between 25 and 45% of the workers in meatpacking are undocumented or illegal immigrants. They know if they raid a giant meatpacking plant, they are going to find dozens and probably hundreds of undocumented people. And sometimes they do, but meatpacking pays $16 an hour, which is more than double the minimum wage. And if you're working in Oklahoma, that's a decent wage. So if they crack down on the slaughterhouses, where we know there are a ton of them, then our meat prices will skyrocket.
Hey Rick, along those same lines, and this is for everybody on the panel, but particularly Nick, who's in the pension fund industry and all along those lines, and even others that are economically based and all along those lines. Reverend Barber brought up a very interesting point, which I had forgotten when he spoke Friday at HI, which is the notion that when the minimum wage was on the voting area and raising the minimum wage, it actually won. So every place it won. So kind of like what Adam talked about, a lot of people were interested in economics, and he felt the Democrats weren't addressing that economic issue because he's definitely been involved in the war on poverty for a number of years and everything. So is that something that you think is needed, and will it happen under a Trump administration? Because the minimum wage has been
Trump is business owner friendly. And business owners don't want to pay more.
And I would agree. I would agree with Rick. Business owners do not want to pay more.
Nick, I want to add to something that you mentioned and what Jacoby was talking about as well. And I mentioned this when I came on board, that the 10 million immigrants that they talk about that actually are here, if you look at the difference between encountered, which is how they count immigrants. Encountered means how many times they encounter a immigrant. It could be the same one 4 or 5 times. So you can't really use that count. But the 10 million that are here, that they believe are here, actually came here in 2010. The majority of them came here in 2010 and 1989. You can go read up on this. It's very well documented. The resources are over 3 million were turned around in 2020 to 2023 and sent back as they were trying to cross over. And more than 50% of the migrants were actually detoured this year when Biden put in the emergency bill when the Congress wouldn't pass Harris's bill. So Biden put in an order real quick, and they were able to detour more than half of them at the border. The other half didn't cross over. They were just stopped and turned around as well. So I think that the fear was incited unnecessarily without the real facts. But people are afraid of migrants taking over, but they're not going to take over the jobs you want. They're just not. Unless you do meatpacking like Rick was talking about.
I just want to move for a point of information. Several panelists have said that only 0.001% of them are criminals, and that is totally incorrect. 100% of them are criminals. Once they broke the law, once they came to the United States, and they did so by skipping the line. So,
they were.
Of information.
Nick, let me challenge that real quick. Can I challenge that real quick?
Nick, the word used is convicted.
hold on. Can I challenge that real quick for you, Nick?
Word usage is
Nick.
convicted criminals, not that they're convicted, right? For crossing over. They're not.
Nick.
But the convicted criminals, the ones that have a record, that's the words I even used.
So this is
the convicted criminals that have a record are 0.001%, and that have a record that is.
And then, like I said, my point of information, the amount of people that have no respect.
There is no group of people.
Can I
There
challenge
is no group of people anywhere in the world.
Hold on a second.
There's no group of people.
Shaquille,
Let
what do you
Shaq
read?
talk. Come on, just let Shaq talk.
Did you tell the bears they can't cross over to your property?
Shaq, just say your words.
Yeah, go ahead, Shaquille.
Go ahead.
There is no group of people anywhere in the world that has a crime rate that low. That is absurd. So why people keep trying to make out the immigrants are like the second coming of Christ is completely beyond me. I also find it really fascinating to hear all these comments from people. Well, business owners, they don't want to pay a higher minimum wage. Well, why don't you pay higher meat prices then? If your reason for wanting to have undocumented people in your country who are basically second-class people, right? They don't have the same ability to access government. They're afraid of ever going to the police if they're mistreated, etc., etc. So why don't you pay more for your meat products? What sort of argument is that to have these people come in? The comment that Jacoby made before that, well, there's these really long waiting lists, so people are chancing it. Absolutely, people are chancing it. And those people that aren't chancing it, they're the ones that are missing out because it becomes better for you to chance it than to not chance it, right? When you look at the entrepreneurial people that come from those sorts of countries, they're unlikely to want to cross the border illegally. They're going to wait in line. So what you're doing now is you're incentivizing people who actually may not be able to offer anything at the beginning. Maybe over time they will be able to. They come in, then they've got long wait lists. Instead of remaining in a country like Mexico, they come in, they try to have children as quickly as they can because it's much more difficult to remove them. And then people on the left say, oh, well, we don't want to break up families. You're letting yourselves be manipulated by a process that's like that. And for families like my own and many others that have spent years and sometimes decades getting, residency and citizenship, it feels pretty crap to have Johnny come lately cross the border and be handed over all of this sort of money and resources whilst everybody else has to wait and work hard to get there. That just sounds totally, totally ridiculous to me. And I think, again, with everything that I'm hearing so far, Democrats are going to have to, if they want to win, the midterms is only 2 years away, right? 2028, it's only 4 years away. If you want to win, you better start listening to your own people because you won't hear it from me. You won't hear it from anybody. At some point, you're going to have to actually start taking the feedback. Otherwise, you're just going to have electoral defeat after electoral defeat.
Okay, so I just want to push back on just a few things here. Nick, when you said that everyone who crosses the border is illegal, you know for a fact that is like saying that we should call everyone with a speeding ticket a criminal. Everyone who sped and did not get caught is a criminal, meaning everybody who drives on this panel is a criminal in that same light. So I think what we're doing is we're feeding into the same system that is demonizing individuals that really are trying to come for help. Shaq, when I point out these figures about crime rates, it is a fact that immigrants have a lower crime rate than natural-born American citizens. It is well documented. Undocumented workers have a lower crime rate than natural-born American citizens. Wait, Shaq, let me finish. Let me finish. So again, when I'm pointing out these figures, those are facts and not just something I made up out of some type of emotion. What ended up happening again, Shaq, let me finish. What ended up happening again is we utilize the same terminology to demonize these people, calling them criminals, calling them crooks and all this other stuff when they're not. Yes, the company should be held accountable for hiring individuals that are undocumented. We know for a fact that yes, people try and jump the line. I have somebody in my family literally who went through the process and actually people jumped the line in front of her. So therefore, it's not a matter of hey, we've got to demonize these people. And also, we should look for ways for actually fixing the process so these individuals aren't waiting 5 and 10 years. And yes, they are coming over creating jobs, the ones that cross legally and the ones that cross illegally. And lastly, one of the things that we keep talking about in terms of these encounters, there are 2 ways that we can understand these encounters in a better light than what we're trying to do. We went crazy about talking about how fentanyl and these illegal encounters and so on and so forth. Yes, encounters are up, but that also shows that our system is actually working better than it was before. So if we're catching more, doesn't that mean that we're actually doing the job better than before? Yes. Rather than saying, well, no, okay, yeah, so we're just guesstimating at the encounters and not actually catching people.
No.
Yes. No, Shaq. Just to point out.
Somebody else talk now. All right, so
I talked for 2 minutes.
Democrats spent 3 years not talking about immigration at all because they were afraid it would make them look bad, which meant that the Republicans and Fox News owned the debate and could spread whatever, points of view they wanted to spread with no countering. So the Democrats, if they want to win, they need to actually address that people voted on.
There's been plenty of countering by Democrats.
Listen,
the countering
Shaq, you're going to go on this countering and all this other stuff. The truth is, Donald Trump got away with lying to the actual populace. People voted for him lying. And you're saying that the Democrats should change and listen to this. Why should Donald Trump ever tell the truth if he is actually getting away with lying?
Jacoby, the Democrats are doing fine. They shouldn't change at all. I think the results of the elections were fairly representative of their great strategy. So please, Democrats, stay the course.
No, hold on a second. I got to push back on you on that, Nick, because I know we're getting ready to end and everything. Because that's actually
we're not going to come back to me and he was cut off. You're going to ask something to Nick, and then you're going to end the show. That's great.
I'm just going to say, come back to you before we close. I'm just going to say, Reverend Barber said what you've been saying, Shaquille, which is that the economy and the economic issues was an issue that the Democrats missed on. That's literally what he said on Friday, and he felt that was a mistake. But then again, he's also about the war on poverty, so he thinks that we need to address more of those in the poor classes as well as the middle class. So he literally said what you said on this network several times, and I would not call him a raging conservative. So, but Shaquille, your take.
About what? I mean, what's the time now? You've got the economics show, which obviously I don't have enough economics qualifications to be on anymore.
Plenty of time.
So, well, just to come back to you, Rick, the idea that Democrats, didn't get a chance to sort of push back against these things, yes, they did. They were repeatedly told by Americans screaming about the immigration problem, right? And Democrats said, "You're all racist. You're all xenophobic."
I'm not disagreeing with you. The Democrats did not address the issue.
No, but that's the thing. They did address the issue.
But not in
They addressed the issue by saying that everybody's racist and everybody's sexist when it comes to gender issues.
That's a crappy way to address it.
It's not crap. That's exactly what's happened, and that's what Americans
They presented a bill that Donald Trump turned away.
So what they've done now...
But that was 3 years into the administration. They didn't...
Their first bill was actually an immigration bill, but it got denied.
What they're now left with, and what the country is now left with, is this massive amount of new people that have come to the country when the country didn't have the resources, either the jobs, the homes, anything, with which to actually keep up with that kind of an influx. And they're being spread all over the country. There were reports that Joe Biden was flying them around the country, right? So why shouldn't people, without calling them racist, why shouldn't people think, we're being replaced? The government doesn't care about us. Why isn't the government helping me and my family to get ahead instead of bringing people in from overseas? Don't you think people have a right to say those sorts of things? But in any case, we're at the hour. We're at the hour. Rick and Jatoba, you've got an economic show to go to. I unfortunately don't have the qualifications to be there, so I'll see you guys on another show.
Right. So you said, but the Democrats did not address adequately any of the stuff that was going on. And if they wanted, they needed to talk about stuff. The New York Times was pissed at Biden because Biden didn't hold press conferences. Somebody from the White House needed to hold a ton more press conferences to explain.
No, we got to wrap up.
I think, Rick, just to touch on that real fast, it's the messaging, not actually the addressing, because they never got out what they did because fine. The economy is top.
That's fine. The Democrats have been crappy at messaging for decades.
No, they've definitely been that, and the messaging has been a major part of the problem, and all along those
lines. Where you deliver the messaging from, the Republicans this time around, like, hit people where they live, social media, and the internet, and podcasts, and the Democrats were doing door knocking, canvassing, and apparently this time around that was way less effective than what the Republicans were doing.
Yeah, so we can talk about that. We got the economic show, as Shaquille just said, and we got media as well. So we're ready to get on out of here.